Hello everyone, let us continue with the study on ecosystem. In the previous video we have seen the various components and we got introduced to the various factors that are a part of the ecosystem and the various trophic levels. In this video we'll be studying about food chains. Food chain. What is a food chain? The definition goes like this. It is the transfer of food energy from producers through a series of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten. Once again, it is the transfer of food energy from producers through a series of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten. Say for example, this is a phytoplankton which is a producer. This is eaten by a primary consumer, a small fish, which in turn is eaten by a secondary consumer, and this in turn will be eaten by a predator, the tertiary consumer. So this is a process of repeated eating and being eaten. That is what is a food chain about. And every food chain, it has what are known as trophic levels, which will be representing as capital T. So ecosystem, they have 4 trophic levels. It starts with the producers which occupy the first trophic level, the base. Next comes the herbivores which occupy the second trophic level. Then the carnivores which occupy the third trophic level. And finally we have decomposers which occupy the ultimate trophic level. All these things, they are arranged in sequence with respect to their food habits. That is what we'll be seeing. And here is a representation of the food chains. So this is T1, which is nothing but the producers, all the green plants, they are here. Next T2, that is trophic level 2, is the herbivores. T3, which is the primary consumers, the carnivores. T4, you can have the secondary consumers, which are carnivores. T5, you can add it as the top carnivores, that is the predators, the tertiary consumers. So all these, upon their decomposition, they are consumed by the decomposers. They are degraded by decomposers, which occupy the last trophic level. So one simple example of how to represent a normal grassland ecosystem. Okay, here we'll be starting with the producer and ending up with the tertiary consumer. So grass, it is a producer, and grasshopper, the primary consumer, which can be consumed by the frog, the secondary consumer, which in turn is taken up by the snake. Snake in turn will be eaten by hawks. So this representation of being eaten, eating and being eaten. So this is your food chain, grassland ecosystem food chain. We have 3 main types of food chains, of which the first one we'll be studying is the grazing food chain. Grazing food chain means it starts with herbivores like these rabbits or squirrels. Say we have these green plants which are eaten up by the rabbits. Rabbits are eaten up by the fox and wolf, and then finally the predator tiger occupies the last trophic level. You have another sequence wherein you have the green plants, the fruits or nuts, they can be taken up by the squirrels. Squirrels are eaten by wild cats, and the wild cats can be eaten by tigers. So this is the sequence of energy flow. This is a sequence of representation of eating and being eaten. The second one is the parasitic food chain. In the parasitic food chain, say for example, let us consider a tree. A tree, it has several insects predating on it as well as the birds feeding on it. These will have parasites, and the parasites in turn will have hyperparasites like the bacteria and fungi. These can be small worms which in turn can have hyperparasites. So this is a food chain, parasitic food chain. We also have a detritus food chain. Detritus food chain means it's about the dead decaying organic matter, and these become very important when it comes to this estuarine and coastal ecosystems. So you have all these fallen leaves and all. These fallen leaves, they have to be decomposed, and decomposers come there. These decomposers can be eaten up by the larvae or the nematodes which are present there. These larvae and nematodes, they can be eaten up by small fish. Small fish are eaten up by larger fish, and larger fish are eaten up by human beings. So this becomes our detritus food chain, starting with the fallen leaves to the decomposes to the larvae, then again the small fish, large fish, and then finally human beings. We have one more term called as the food web. Previously we have seen food chain, which is a simple representation of the various organisms, okay, how they are being eaten and what is eating them and all. But actually if you see, one organism may be eaten by more than another organism. So we can see that one organism of one food chain can become or can occupy a different trophic level in another food chain. So here you can see that the food chains, they are not as such so linear, and each of the food chains, they can be interconnected. So the interconnecting patterns of several food chains, they form what is known as a food web. And the arrangement of it looks like this, somewhat like this. It's complicated. It becomes like a what is known as a web, and we call it as food web. This is one simplest grassland ecosystem. Say this is the plant which can be dependent upon by grasshopper or even the mouse. This can feed on the leaves, while the rabbits can feed on the fruits, while this can feed some other part. This grasshopper, it can be eaten by the lizard, or directly the hawk can also eat it. While you can see that the mice which is there, this mice, it can be eaten by the hawk directly or by the snake, and the snake can eat the hawk. Snake can be eaten up by the hawk, and the rabbit can be eaten up by the hawk. So you have representations like this. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 food chains which can operate in a small simple grassland ecosystem. This is a representation of a very simple food web. While this is a very complicated food web which you can see in the forest ecosystem. So you can see you have several producers over there. Like you have the plants will have flowers, you have nuts, you have seeds, you have fresh fruits, all these things will be there. These are the producers. And plants will have several insects on them. Okay, and in the soil you have all the decomposers and all. So you can see that these plants, they can eaten up by these plants or the trees, they can be eaten up by all these primary consumers, right from the deer to the squirrel to the butterfly, okay, even a frog, even a bird, okay, everything, all these they can feed on that. Then these can be fed upon by the secondary consumers, all these things we have. Then these are the tertiary consumers. But you can see how to trace out a path. How should I create a food chain for this forest ecosystem? So this is the deer. Let us see the simplest one. This deer, it can be hunted by the lion, or even here you can see that the koala can also have it. Now when it's coming to the squirrel, it can become a prey here, or here, or here. Now this is the frog. Frog can be a prey for all these things. Everything can consume it. So you can see everything is linked up. Everything is linked up. Okay, everything is linked up. So here I cannot trace out one path. Say for example, butterfly is there. Butterfly can be eaten by a raven, but it can also be eaten by this. It can also be eaten by this. So what not? We have 3 food chains. If I have to represent only for butterfly, through butterfly, it goes like this. Okay, many things can eat it. So this is how actually in real life the food chains will be operating. Everything will be interconnected. If I am representing one part like this is one food chain, while this can be the other food chain. Okay, this can be the other food chain. So like that we can represent the food chains, but actually since they are interconnected, it is becoming a food web. The complex of the one is the forest ecosystem food web. Thank you.